A steamboat is a boat in which the primary method of marine propulsion is steam power, typically driving propellers or paddle wheels. Steamboats sometimes use the prefix designation SS, SS, or SS or PS, however these designations are most often used for steamships. The term steamboat is used to refer to smaller, insular, steam-powered boats working on lakes and rivers, particularly riverboats. As using steam became more reliable, steam power became applied to larger, ocean-going vessels. History. Early attempts at powering a boat by steam were made by the French inventor Denis Papin and the English inventor Thomas Newcomen. Papin invented the steam digester and experimented with closed cylinders and pistons pushed in by atmospheric pressure, analogous to the pump built by Thomas Savery in England during the same period. Papin proposed applying this steam pump to the operation of a paddle wheel boat and tried to market his idea in Britain. He was unable to successfully convert the piston motion into rotary motion and the steam could not produce enough pressure. Newcomen's design did solve the first problem, but remained shackled to the inherent limitations of the engines of the time. A steamboat was described and patented by English physician John Allen in 1729. In 1736, Jonathan Hulls was granted a patent in England for a Newcomen engine-powered steamboat. But it was the improvement in steam engines by James Watt that made the concept feasible. William Henry of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, having learned of Watt's engine on a visit to England, made his own engine. In 1763 he put it in a boat. The boat sank, and while Henry made an improved model, he did not appear to have much success, though he may have inspired others. 18th century. The first steam-powered ship, Pyroscapher, was a paddle steamer powered by a Newcomen steam engine. It was built in France in 1783 by Marquis Claude de Jouffroy and his colleagues as an improvement of an earlier attempt, the 1776 Palmipede. At its first demonstration on 15 July 1783, Pyroscapher traveled upstream on the River Seiwan for some 15 minutes before the engine failed. Presumably this was easily repaired, as the boat is said to have made several such journeys. Following this, de Jouffroy attempted to get the government interested in his work, but for political reasons was instructed that he would have to build another version on the Seine in Paris. De Jouffroy did not have the funds for this, and, following the events of the French Revolution, work on the project was discontinued after he left the country. Similar boats were made in 1785 by Jon Fitch in Philadelphia and William Symington in Dumfries, Scotland. Fitch successfully trialled his boat in 1787, and in 1788, he began operating a regular commercial service along the Delaware River between Philadelphia and Burlington, New Jersey, carrying as many as 30 passengers. This boat could typically make 7 to 8 miles per hour and traveled more than 2,000 miles during its short length of service. The Fitch steamboat was not a commercial success, as this travel route was adequately covered by relatively good wagon roads. The following year, a second boat made 30-mile excursions, and in 1790, a third boat ran a series of trials on the Delaware River before patent disputes dissuaded Fitch from continuing. Meanwhile, Patrick Miller of Dalswinton, near Dumfries, Scotland, had developed double-hulled boats propelled by manually cranked paddle wheels placed between the hulls, even attempting to interest various European governments in a giant warship version, 246 feet long. Miller sent King Gustav III of Sweden in actual small-scale version, 100 feet long, called Experiment. Miller then engaged engineer William Symington to build his patent steam engine that drove a stern-mounted paddle wheel in a boat in 1785. The boat was successfully tried out on Dalswinton Lock in 1788 and was followed by a larger steamboat the next year. Miller then abandoned the project. 19th century. The failed project of Patrick Miller caught the attention of Lord Dundas, governor of the Forth and Clyde Canal Company. and at a meeting with the Canal Company's directors on 5 June 1800, they approved his proposals for the use of a model of a boat by Captain Shank to be worked by a steam engine by Mr. Symington on the canal. The boat was built by Alexander Hart at Grangemouth to Symington's design, with a vertical cylinder engine and crosshead transmitting power to a crank, driving the paddle wheels. Trials on the River Carron in June 1801 were successful and included towing sloops from the River Forth up the Carron and thence along the Forth and Clyde Canal. In 1801, Symington patented a horizontal steam engine directly linked to a crank, and got the support of Lord Dundas for a second steamboat which would become famous as the Charlotte Dundas. Named in honor of his lordship's daughter, Symington designed a new hull around his powerful horizontal engine, with the crank driving a large paddle wheel in a central upstand in the hull, aimed at avoiding damage to the canal banks. The new boat was 56 feet long, 18 feet wide and 8 feet depth, with a wooden hull. The boat was built by John Allen, and the engine by the Carron Company. The first sailing was on the canal in Glasgow on 4 January 1803, with Lord Dundas and a few of his relatives and friends on board. The crowd were pleased with what they saw, but Symington wanted to make improvements, and another more ambitious trial was made on March 28. On this occasion, the Charlotte Dundas towed two 70-ton barges 30 kilometers along the Forth and Clyde Canal to Glasgow. Despite a strong breeze right ahead, which stopped all other canal boats, it took only 9¼ hours, giving an average speed of about 3 kilometers per hour. The Charlotte Dundas was the first practical steamboat. It demonstrated the practicality of steam power for ships, and was the first to be followed by continuous development of steamboats. The American, Robert Fulton, was present at the trials of the Charlotte Dundas and was intrigued by the potential of the steamboat. While working in France, he corresponded with and was helped by the Scottish engineer Henry Bell, who may have given him the first model of his working steamboat. He designed his own steamboat which sailed along the River Seine in 1803. He later shipped his first proper steamship to America in 1807, North River Steamboat, which carried passengers between New York City and Albany, New York. Clermont was able to make the 150-mile trip in 32 hours. The steamboat was powered by a Boulton and Watt engine and was capable of long-distance travel. It was the first commercially successful steamboat, transporting passengers along the Hudson River. In October 1811, a ship designed by John Stevens, Little Juliana, would operate as the first steam-powered ferry between Hoboken and New York City. Stevens' ship was engineered as a twin screw-driven steamboat in juxtaposition to Clermont's Boulton and Watt engine. The design was a modification of Stevens' prior paddle steamer, the Phoenix, the first steamship to successfully navigate the open ocean in its route from Hoboken to Philadelphia. Henry Bell's P.S. Comet of 1812 inaugurated a passenger service along the River Clyde in Scotland. The Marjorie, launched in Dumbarton in 1814, was the first steamboat to be seen on the River Thames in January 1815, much to the amazement of Londoners, and operated a London to Gravesend River service until 1816, when she was bought by the French and became the first steamboat to cross the Channel, reaching Paris and inaugurating a Seine steamboat service under her new name Elise. Ocean-going. The first sea-going steamboat was Richard Wright's first steamboat, Experiment, an ex-French lugger. She steamed from Leeds to Yarmouth, arriving Yarmouth the 19th of July 1813. Tug, the first tugboat, was launched by the Woods brothers, Port Glasgow, on 5 November 1817. In the summer of 1817 she was the first steamboat to travel round the north of Scotland to the east coast.